In 1971, President Nixon declared war on drugs. This was yet another chapter in the ongoing war against us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to summarize for you the meeting that I have just had with the bipartisan leaders, which began at 8 o'clock and was completed 2 hours later. I began the meeting by making this statement, which I think needs to be made to the nation. America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive. I have asked the Congress to provide the legislative authority and the funds.
Nixon's own aide, John Ehrlichman, later stated, and this is a quote, "We knew that we couldn't make it illegal to be black, but by associating blacks with heroin and then criminalizing it, we could disrupt their communities." And that's exactly what the hell they did. They weren't trying to clean up the streets. They were trying to fill up the prisons. In the 1980s, the government needed money to fund an illegal war in Nicaragua. This was a war that they couldn't afford, and a war that they really couldn't publicly justify. So they decided it would be a good idea to sell some dope.
Today, there's a new epidemic, smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack. It is an explosively destructive and often lethal substance which is crushing its users. It is an uncontrolled fire.
A ton of cocaine, pure cocaine worth hundreds of millions, is smuggled into the United States. Sound familiar? Not the way this ton of cocaine got here. According to what the former head of the Drug Enforcement Administration told Mike Wallace, this drug shipment got here courtesy of what he calls drug trafficking by the CIA in partnership with the Venezuelan National Guard.
And what reason did the CIA have for promoting this drug smuggling?
Well, the only rationale that's ever been offered is that this would lead to some valuable drug intelligence about the Colombian cartels.
The CIA and the Guardia Nacional wanted to let cocaine go on into the traffic without doing anything. They wanted to let it come up to the United States, no surveillance, no nothing.
In other words, you weren't going to stop them in Miami or Houston or wherever. These drugs were simply going to go to the United States and then go into the traffic and eventually reach the streets.
That's what they wanted to do, yes. And we had very, very lengthy discussions where I told them what the U.S. law was and the fact that we could not do this.
So here you got Jim Campbell, chief of station, who knows about this. Mark McFarland, CIA officer, knows about this, and are stimulating this business of sending what are uncontrolled deliveries of drugs, smuggling drugs into the United States, right?
Right. As they explained to me, that this would enable them to gain the traffickers' confidence, keep their informant cool, and it would result in future seizures of larger quantities of drugs. And also they hoped to, I guess, they thought they were going to get Pablo Escobar at the scene of the crime or something, which I found personally ludicrous.
If I had anything to do with illegal drug trafficking, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
General Guillen is right about one thing. He could travel to New York to talk to us about Judge Bonner's charges only because he had already been granted immunity from prosecution in that DEA CIA Inspector General's investigation. So we confronted the General with this document, a report from that investigation that reads like his confession. Guillen lost his composure and when directly confronted concerning his involvement in the unauthorized and illegal shipment of cocaine to the U.S., confesses.
Look, I say that confession is not true. In that report, there are a lot of lies. It's useless. I have not confessed any word.
So you're clean?
Clean until the last day God has for me.
They simply looked the other way and allowed cocaine to magically come through the back door of the United States. In very much the same way that they allowed heroin to come into the United States back in the 70s. And that cocaine, it didn't wind up in Beverly Hills. It didn't end up in some affluent suburban community. Hell no. It landed right on us. It hit the hood hard. And a brother named Freeway Ricky Ross, he had a lot to do with it. As a matter of fact, he was instrumental. Rick didn't carry a badge. He didn't gangbang. He didn't wave a flag or claim a set. But Rick was the most important crack distributor in America. And he was unknowingly feeding a machine that was designed to destroy his own people.
You are inextricably linked with Los Angeles. I mean, your nickname comes from the 110 freeway. Could you just describe Los Angeles at that time and what the dividing line that the freeway represented?
You know, when you went east of the 110 freeway, it turned to black, and when you went west, it was all white. It was definitely segregated, and the 110 freeway was that line.
The drug so powerful it will empty the money from your pockets, make you sell the watch off your wrist, the clothes off your back.
At his height, Rick Ross moved over $3 million a day in crack cocaine. And who was his plug? A Nicaraguan named Danilo Blandon. He was a snitch, an informant who was tied directly to the CIA. Now Blandon sold the product to Rick, and Rick would cook it up, hook it up, and flood the streets with it. Los Angeles, Oakland, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Miami. Rick built the model very much like a corporation. But he wasn't the real CEO. No, the real boss was hidden behind government seals and warplanes. See, they protected the plug, but they buried Rick.
Ross, now in federal prison in San Diego, became an overnight millionaire.
At our heyday, as much as maybe $1 million a day, $2 million a day sometimes, maybe more, a few days. This wasn't every day, though. Right. It was like, we had days that...
That's how much you were taking in?
Right, in one day.
Ross says he complained to his supplier, Danilo Blandon, that he had difficulty counting all the money.
So eventually he bought us a money machine, and he brought it over to us. And it eased the pain, a lot. But eventually it even got too much for one money machine. We wound up getting 3 money machines to count it. Because one money machine would just be running, and then we'd have money stacked. And we hired people that all they would do all day was count money, eventually.
Full-time money counters.
Yeah.
Even though Ross is a central figure in this story, he can shed little light on the people he dealt with. Blandon, what did you know about him? Did you know his name?
No, just Danilo.
Danilo.
And we used to call him Nika.
You don't even know his last name?
No.
Did he ever talk about the government, U.S. government?
No, never.
DEA, CIA?
No,
nothing.
Never.
While Ross made easy money, Dr. Exelina Bean was coping with cocaine's tragic consequences. At the neonatology ward at Martin Luther King Hospital in L.A., she saw 60 babies a month born with cocaine in their systems. Today, Bean's anger embodies a common view that the black community has been victimized.
Every child, every baby, every child of a substance abusing mother and a substance abusing family should be considered a victim of violence and be entitled to reparations.
Rick Ross was illiterate. He didn't know how to read. In fact, he taught himself to read with the help of one of his cellies in prison. And with that knowledge, he studied law, and he was able to find a way out of prison. It appears that he was overcharged for the crime that he committed. Now he spends a great deal of his time trying to make amends, putting on community programs to try to help the people. Maybe he's doing his penance, because he most certainly poisoned an entire generation of his own kind. In 1996, a journalist named Gary Webb connected all the dots. He had documents, he had memos, he had names. Gary had receipts. And he compiled all of this information into a report called The Dark Alliance. In that report, Gary showed how the U.S. government allowed cocaine to pour into our neighborhoods to fund illegal wars.
My name's Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist. I've been an investigative journalist for about 25 years for daily newspapers. And in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking. What my story showed was that the cocaine that was being sold in those neighborhoods was coming from mainly one source, and this one source was being used to finance a guerrilla war in Central America. The general idea of the CIA dealing drugs was something that the American mainstream press had never written about before, and that's why it prompted outrage among blacks, among drug reform activists, among politicians, by the CIA, by every federal agency involved in the drug war, because it showed they weren't doing their jobs, that it was a fraud.
It appears that the government didn't give a damn how white Gary happened to be. He still ended up dead in 2004 with 2 gunshots to the head, and they called it a suicide. How in the hell do you shoot yourself in the head twice? They didn't just kill the story. No, they killed the messenger. They erased the storyteller. Crack cocaine was the bait. And prison was the business. Corporations saw dollar signs in our downfall. Between 1980 and the year 2000, the prison population exploded. It was fueled by drug arrest and mandatory minimums and 3 strike laws. Private prisons grew by over 500%. And who was filling those prisons? Yep, it was us. Once again, forced to work for pennies on the dollar. Walmart, Microsoft, Victoria's Secret, lots of companies all using prison labor. This was slavery with a W-2 form.
It is traumatic to a community when disproportionately there is an absence of men in the community because so many of them are serving such long sentences. You know, and having a parent that's in prison, you don't have your mom supporting you through life, or you don't have your dad encouraging you in ways that are necessary to develop. They're also wearing the burdens of their parents' crime. They didn't commit a crime.
My mother was incarcerated when I was younger. I was a baby, and I went into foster care.
I was in my mom's belly when he went to jail. When my dad gets out, I'll be 15. My daddy's so far.
They gave my dad 20 years, and that's a long time.
A growing number of American prisons are now contracted out as for-profit businesses to for-profit companies. The companies are paid by the state, and their profit depends on spending as little as possible on the prisoners and the prisons.
The reason why we like the private prison industry from a stock investment perspective, we think that there's substantial opportunity for growth. In 2004, there was about 6% market share. 2014, 8.3%. For the past 10 years, they gained about 35%. It's an interesting and compelling investment opportunity for a lot of investors today.
But they didn't stop there. Oh no. They broke our homes. They created welfare policies where women were denied welfare if a man lived in the home. So men were forced to leave or watch their families starve. And if they couldn't pay child support, then they went to jail. They didn't just incarcerate our men. They erased us. And then they billed us for the removal. This was economic genocide. So what did we lose? Well, we lost generations, we lost wealth, and we lost time. Over 1.5 million so-called black men incarcerated between 1980 and the year 2000. More than $1.5 trillion in lost income, property, and generational wealth. And meanwhile, private prisons was pulling in $5 billion a year. $5 billion a year. See, they just couldn't let us organize. So they flooded our towns. And they couldn't let us build. So they burned our businesses. And they couldn't let us spend money on ourselves and protect ourselves. So they decimated our organizations, and they forced us to spend money just to survive. Somehow, they traded revolution for recidivism. They turned our pain into somebody else's capital. And all of a sudden, the idea of revolutionary spending becomes a memory that died with Malcolm X, a memory that perished with the last installment of Dr. Martin Luther King when he finally woke up from his dream. A memory that died with the Black Panther Party for self-defense. They declared a war on us. And it didn't just start in the 60s. It didn't start in the 70s. It started when they got here. It started when we met. Uckery, the F is silent, is brought to you by Century 21 Rehabilitation Services Incorporated, California nonprofit 501c3, for charitable and educational purposes only. Fair use.